A beta male dom sub story.
Welcome to Groovy Movies. My name is Lily Austin.
And my name's James Brailsford. Hello.
Now, James, I want to start this episode with a very important question.
Okay. He asks slightly cautiously. The answer is, well, the answer depends on who's listening. Carry on.
Is sex back?
Is it back? A bit. I think we're thawing out. Maybe cautiously. It's cautiously, furtively back. I don't think we're like early 90s back, but I think we're just kind of, there's a little bit coming back.
Yeah, I like that. That's a good answer. Very, very balanced. So that is a clue about the film we are discussing today, which is Halina Reign's 2024 movie, Babygirl.
Now, this is a film I didn't really know much about at all. I mean, it was a film we wanted to discuss for the pod, and the only thing I knew about it was Nicole Kidman. It's some kind of affair with somebody at work and power dynamic. I think those were literally the only words I picked up from anyone saying anything about the film. So I went into it with knowing literally that much, which is I like doing that with films as much as possible. So it was. Imagine my surprise when I was like, oh, it's a BDSM film. Okay.
Well, I knew that it was about a dom-sub dynamic. And I knew that was like an inversion of their power dynamic at work because Nicole Kidman plays the CEO of a robotics company and Harris Dickinson plays Samuel, an intern at the company who she has this affair with, and I knew that he is in the dom role and she takes the sub role. So I was excited about that, for sure.
Well, yeah. It definitely, I don't know. Just brought back a few memories. What can I say? Anyway.
Oh my God, there's so much that we could discuss. I could ask you about, but maybe this isn't the podcast for that.
Another podcast.
I mean, I will say that I was thinking, I really wanted to discuss this film because there has been a lot of hype around it. Like I've heard a lot of excitement about this film coming out for many, many months, and it is right up my street. I love a good erotic thriller. I love all of those movies from the 90s, and this is something that Halina Reijn has talked about being a big inspiration for her, Basic Instinct. She was hugely inspired by directors like Paul Verhoeven and Adrian Lyne. As we've talked about before on this podcast, the 90s was the era for erotic thrillers.
Absolutely, and it's interesting that she references those inspiration because as I was watching the film, I hadn't done, as I've just said, I didn't really do much kind of digging into the film beforehand because I just want to kind of experience it. But as I was watching it, it was a packed audience for Monday night, which I was very happy about. It wasn't on in many screens. It had a couple of screenings in the day, but that screening at 8:00 on a Monday night was almost packed out, which was great. So it was nice to see it with a busy audience, and it had an audience reaction that reminded me of how I felt when I watched Basic Instinct in the 90s, which was every time the sexy scenes came on, there was just a tiny ripple of laughter, nervous laughter. And I just thought, and also the subject matter, I was watching it thinking, this is definitely paying a debt or a homage, inspiration to Basic Instinct, to that kind of power dynamic thriller that there were many of in the 90s. Yeah, so it was interesting to learn that was a direct inspiration for the film.
Yeah, it was the same in my cinema, totally packed. And I was going with a Movie Go ticket, as it were. And so me and two friends, we were aware, partly because you, James, had messaged me to tell me that it was a packed cinema for your screening. We were very aware that it was going to be packed. If we didn't get there early enough, we weren't going to get tickets because, you can't pre-book with MovieGo. So the three of us were all messaging feverishly plotting about who could leave the earliest from work to get there in time. We were literally, it was like a race to the finish to get there in enough time to get seats.
3 tickets to Babygirl.
It's like, I can't miss a screening.
Out of my way. I want a front row seat.
Exactly. I have to say it was like desperately wanting to see the film and also desperately wanting to go to this 6:20 screening because I wanted to have an early night as well. Two things can be true. But you're right, in the cinema, there was a lot of laughter and the film is funny. That's part of its charm, I think, is that there is some wry arch moments in those 90 thrillers, but it's not generally like intentionally laugh out loud funny. But I feel like there are quite a few moments like that in the film, kind of that come out of the fact that they're exploring this BDSM dynamic and they both don't really know quite how to do it, which is really, that I think is quite different and quite charming, that there isn't a dom who knows everything and is like guiding her through this world. They both are new at it.
No.
And him being this young guy, he's not a super experienced. He's he's like 25 or something, but he like senses that she wants this thing and he wants to give her what she wants, as it were. But isn't quite sure. And that dynamic is quite amusing at many points. But I do think also it's that thing of like, oh, it's a bit awkward being in a packed cinema watching these very erotic scenes. So what can you do but laugh?
That's exactly there was the genuine laughter at amusing points, but then there was just the a little trickle of nervous like tee-hees, of which I remember having a nervous tee-hee that I managed to keep inside. It was an internal one when I saw Basic Instinct. It almost came out. I really wanted to tee-hee, but I kept it in like a good 17-year-old seeing his first 18-year-old erotic thriller, kept it in.
Oh gosh, I didn't keep any in this one. I was laughing the whole way through, but also finding it very sexy. Like, I think this film definitely achieves being sexy. Do you agree?
Oh, completely agree. Yeah.
Which I think is not easily done. There's a real art to making a film that's like truly sexy without it being, I don't know, almost gratuitous or like without losing its heart, perhaps.
Absolutely. No, it's when you look at these erotic thrillers of the 90s, it's almost like the sex scenes are treated. I mean, there's treated as sex set pieces in this film, but I think in the 90s there was very much like, right, we're having a sex scene, so we're going to have a sequence where we see the woman get naked and we show off her figure, and it's like, it's almost like an advertisement for here is a sexy woman that we're showing off for a moment, and then the sex scene continues. Whereas here, because they were directed by male directors, and I think there was a certain expectation of what the male moviegoers might want from those sequences in the 90s, which it's a different approach that Halina Reign's taking, because it's more sensual. It's less, and there's much more of the guy with his top off and his torso. So we're not just fixated on Nicole Kidman's body, although she does have. I mean, it's very powerful, the sequence where she does end up taking her clothes off as part of their kind of play together.
Yeah, but you're right, because there was a real build to it. We don't get it right away, guys.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah.
But I think what you said is absolutely right. But what I really appreciated reading that Halina Reijn had said was when she talked about being inspired by these 90s directors, she said that when she saw those movies, they made her feel less alone with her own sexual fantasies and desires. And I found that very pleasing to read, because I think in the kind of post-Me Too world, there is a lot of re-examining movies from previous decades, and a lot of that circles around the fact that these are films mostly made by male directors, and there's a male gaze, and there are these problematic representations of women. And I think whilst that is true, there's also no point in denying that for women as much as for men, those films are often like, they have been important to us and to some extent reflective of our own feelings, our own desires. even if not done in like the perfect way. And I sort of really appreciated hearing a director talk about that, acknowledge that, and then not only to acknowledge it, but then make her own version of that film. Because this film is really the evolution of those movies, because it takes the exciting thriller element from it and then really does use it to explore something that isn't explored enough in film and cinema. In fact, quite the opposite, which is, for one thing, female orgasm. This is a story about, as much as it is about exploring BDSM, it's also a film about a woman who can't orgasm with her husband and has been faking it for her whole relationship. That is like very, very common and never explored, very rarely explored in TV or cinema. And instead, it's actually these TV shows with these ridiculously implausible orgasm scenes that are kind of contributing to women feeling the need to do that. And so I really, really love, because it's so well done. That very first scene, the first thing we hear, the first thing we see is Nicole Kidman doing this really overblown orgasm that feels, when you're watching it, I was like, oh God, this is a bit over the top. And it was such a great, but it's also incredibly familiar. It was just like every orgasm you see in porn, every orgasm you see in movies. And it was
very performative.
Exactly. So performative, very, sensual in a way that it's pleasant to watch. She looked beautiful. And it was just so wonderful for that immediately to be extinguished by her going and actually orgasming the way she does in I might say no less erotic. In fact, I think more sexy, but in a much more kind of guttural, animalistic way and like awkward,
Watching hardcore porn on a laptop, I was not expecting that to open the movie, but it sets the tone.
Really,
you know the kind of film you're getting.
Yeah, I loved it. I thought it was just the perfect opener and really set the tone for the rest of the film about what this film would explore, because it very much is working on two levels: the kind of exciting erotic thriller, when are they going to be discovered, how will they be discovered, what's going to happen, is her world going to implode, that tension that carries you through the film. But then also under this exploration of, as Reijn described it, a film about self-love and discovering self-love, and it worked on both levels really well.
Yeah, I mean, I loved seeing a BDSM relationship on screen that wasn't 50 Shades of Grey. Although, in my heart of hearts, I was still like, oh, but again, the male character, even though he's an intern, and so obviously the power dynamic is she's the boss of the company, he's the intern, his character, just as his person when he's not in a dominant BDSM space, he's still a dominant character. He's still got a confidence, he's got a certain edge of dominance. I'm like, he's a dominant who's also plays a dominant, whereas what we see with Nicole Kidman is the classic transfer of the role, which I wish I'd have seen that from the male character, because I think how he was as a character is how people who don't know about these kind of worlds probably think that dominant people are, which they can be, but they don't have to be. So I just felt there was a missed opportunity for just a little bit more nuance there from the male character.
Interesting. I mean, okay. On the one hand, I think you do raise a very good point. There is no other hand for that. That's a very valid point. And
how many? Where are these hands coming from, really? And how many have you got there?
I think within this conversation, that's like that comment I'm just going to leave hanging in the air. So I think absolutely, and I'd love, that's a very good point that I hadn't even considered, and I would love to see a film where like a Mark from Peep Show type character has this like very exciting, I would love just a broad comedy about a sort of awkward, perhaps introverted, shy guy.
I don't want a broad comedy. I want it to be just the same kind of tone as Babygirl, but with just not he's kind of clearly an alpha guy. He clearly has his male friends who he goes to the pub with, plays football.
I disagree. I completely disagree with that. I don't think, to me, he doesn't seem like he's an alpha amongst men at all, because if you see him when he's in with that other gaggle of interns, he's kind of giggly and trying to fit in with them. I think he actually is a shapeshifter that kind of accommodates whatever the room wants from him. And he sensed inherently from Nicole Kidman that she would respond well to him being assertive and dominant. But I actually don't think he has that same behavior when he is with other people, and I can't picture him with a group of lads. I just don't think that. I think he is I think he's a loner for sure. But
no, that for sure. I see you're right. Yeah, he did come across a little bit, but I think it's okay. Here's the other thing: is I just thought dramatically, it's less of a transformation for him to go from being, confident, dominant, kind of loner type to being the dominant in that situation. Whereas I think the transformation for Nicole Kidman's character is much more of a power exchange for her. I think she's making a much bigger power exchange, and I would have liked to have seen something a bit more equivalent to the guy. I just think that's a little bit less what you think you might see.
I think you're right, but I will just counter that by saying one of the huge joys of the film is how sexy Harris Dickinson's character is and the energy he has. But actually, when the very first scene he's in, because I remember him from Triangle of Sadness and how brilliant he was in that. And I was a little bit taken...
that's where I've seen him.
Yeah. And I was a little taken aback in the very first instance when you meet him, because he didn't come across very sexy to me. He seemed quite awkward. And so actually, no, I think in the very first instance, he doesn't have this dominant. He seems a little bit strange, and he seems not quite comfortable in his own skin. And then by the second and third scene, I was like all in there with Nicole Kidman. I was like, yes, he's really hot. And so I think there is a bit of that, but it's earlier on. And to be honest, I just think for the story, I think we really needed her to be lusting after him from a distance for a little bit of time. And if he'd been different from that, I think, and part of that lusting is the fact that she senses in him this dominance. So I feel like if that was a complete surprise and change from how he is normal day-to-day life, I don't think we would have got that. But I loved the idea, and I think we need to get this done on spec by some fantastic. We need to call up Diablo Cody and get her to write this script.
A beta male dom sub story. There we go.
Or a beta female, perhaps. We could a nice lesbian story, maybe.
Maybe.
We'll work on it. We'll workshop it.
Although isn't that bound? I don't know. Anyway.
Oh my God! Yeah, maybe it's been done already.
Yeah. Anyway.
I don't know if it's bound. I feel like they don't do. For me,
no, they don't go all the way.
They don't switch really. I think their roles, and from what we see, in bed they're kind of the same. Oh, such a good film.
Well, there you go, listeners. Anyone, you're welcome to our idea. We want a sexy BDSM lesbian film. Is that what we're pitching? Oh, beta lesbians.
But no, maybe it's nice to do beta male. Both. We could do a whole little mini series.
But I found the sequences in the hotel room. I thought they were very, very intimate, very sensual, and I think it really captured like this atmosphere of two people in their own little universe. Like they close the doors of these hotel rooms. They're not the fanciest hotel rooms. They're just a private space for them both. And in that moment, it's just them in their like dynamic that they have, and I think they captured it so well. The cinematographer Jasper Wolf shot those sequences, a lot of handheld work. He was saying about how Halina, Reijn, they've worked together on 3 films, how she likes his handheld style, but that gives it a real documentary feel. As soon as you go handheld in a film, you're subconsciously being thinking, oh, this is happening for real in front of me, because there's a cameraman and it's not all perfect. Because contrast that with Nicole Kidman when she's in her job and we see her, the camera's locked off. It doesn't move. Static, really powerful frames, actually. Or if the camera does move, it's very precise. But as soon as we go into this, like, private hidden universe of their relationship, we're handheld. They talk about how it's long takes, 20-minute long takes, so they can both the two performers can really feel that intimacy, and not having someone going action cut. It's not breaking that kind of moment that they have. And I thought that was one of the strengths of the film for me was that feeling of just like intimacy.
Absolutely. I think it really builds the sexual tension, the fact that we don't have cuts. It's not heavy music coming over in artistic cuts of different body parts, disconnected from the human being. It's just long shots of watching them explore this interest together.
Which I think more accurately recreates that kind of atmosphere thing. Than I think if it had been done in the 90s, it would have had much more money, and don't get me wrong, I love production value, and I was thinking, part of me thought, I wish this had a bit more money. I wish it had been a bit glossier, but that would have possibly worked against it, because you're right, we don't have these beautifully stylized shots of body parts. It's much more documentary. It's in the moment, and it kind of gives you a feel of that. It basically makes you feel like you are almost like a secret witness to something that nobody else knows.
Yeah. No, for me, I loved the budget. I think it was made for 20 million. So yeah, pretty small budget, especially for a Nicole Kidman movie.
Tiny, yeah.
And I like what they did with it, because I mean, there's an interesting thing with this film that it starts just in the early days of December, I'd imagine, because one of the early scenes is a Christmas party. And throughout the film, in every scene at Nicole Kidman's fancy home, because, you know, as we said, she's a CEO, so she has this very affluent life in New York, and they also have this house upstate that they've clearly rented for the Christmas period. And so there are various scenes between these two homes, and always in every scene in these homes you see a Christmas tree in the corner, which was something I became a little bit obsessed with, because I just found it fascinating that all of this action we're clearly meant to know that this action is happening over max 3 weeks, because the end of the film is just after Christmas. Yeah. And I found fascinating, because seeing a Christmas tree does two things. One, it reminds you of this very short time frame. And it was almost as if time is standing still while they're in this illicit affair. And the other thing is it invokes family and family time, the opposite of eroticism, you know. Christmas is the least sexy thing you can think of, in my humble opinion. and so always in the background of this, of it's almost close to a breakdown that Nicole Kidman is going through, because, you know, it's something that she wants so much. Her desires are overtaking everything else in her life. And she is clearly someone who normally is incredibly controlled. She wants to appear perfect. She wants her company to appear perfect. I don't think it's a coincidence that she's the CEO of a robotics company. She herself is pretty robotic. And having tried to control and kind of keep submerged these desires, they're now bursting forth for the first time in her adult life. And all the while, you see these like reminders of the perfect family that is there in the background and what she's risking just in this one Christmas tree in the corner. And I really like those sorts of touches.
I hadn't fully clocked that little detail. Thanks, Lily. Yeah.
I love a Christmas tree. So also the other thing I really love, speaking about the family, I loved Antonio Banderas playing her husband and being the picture perfect dream of a husband. He's so sweet, he's so loving, he's so supportive. He has his own very exciting career as a theatre director. Yeah. And I love that again, because it's a lovely, I don't know, evolution of these 90s thrillers, because she has this perfect family, and you're just like, you're wanting her to do her thing and explore, but you're also like, oh my God, how are you gonna, you know, you're ruining this family that you've created, this poor man that you're gonna like leave in the dust. And I don't know if we should talk about the ending or not, maybe just in coded words, but I was so initially surprised and almost felt a little bit cheated, because I had such 90s thrillers in my head. I had a real expectation of where this film would go. And it completely surprises you by going a different way. And on reflection, the more I thought about it, the more I thought that is a fantastic, perfect ending to the film, because it is a retort, it is an answer to all these problematic 90s movies where the woman is evil and always ends badly. I love that it didn't go that way.
Yeah, no, I mean, the film doesn't quite have that same, I can't quite think of the right way to describe it, that same kind of plot momentum that the 90s thrillers do. For example, Basic Instinct, you know, is she a serial killer, is she not a serial killer? That's like quite an amped up plot point, whereas we're not there with Babygirl, which is fine, because it would make the film ridiculous. It would break the film, I think. But, you know, it's a nod to those thrillers. And, I didn't quite know how it was going to work out. It just kind of, it didn't go quite where you thought.
Yeah, you're right. I think those movies are very extreme. You know, Fatal Attraction, someone's going to end up dead in a bath. Like, the tension, the thriller element is so extreme. And I actually really enjoyed that in this. The stakes weren't life-threatening, but honestly, for me, watching the movie felt a lot more real and intense. Like, the anxiety I felt throughout this film at the thought of it inevitably being exposed and her family life and her career imploding, you know, that feels a lot closer to the reality that most of us live in. You know, the chance of us ending up getting murdered or murdering someone else, I hopefully quite slim. But the chance of you making a stupid choice at work and it ruining your career, your family, you know, that is closer to a risk. And so I actually really enjoyed that the thriller element was grounded in such reality.
Yeah. And I like the fact that it's really, it's not really about the sex, it's about the intimacy. That's what I think. And so it's almost the emotional cheating that's kind of the real killer, isn't it? Is that Antonio Banderas realised that there's somebody who is more intimate with his wife. And I know you can say intimate is having sex, but it's like an emotional intimacy. Like they have a connection that's this dom-sub thing that he's not a part of, that it won't work for him because he's not into it. There's like a scene, isn't there, where Nicole Kidman and Antonio Banderas, she tries to encourage him to kind of be a bit more dominant, and he's just like, "You're trying to make me into the villain," you know. He says.
Yes. And also,
and he doesn't like it. It doesn't work for him, so he'll never be that for her, you know.
And I also think the infidelity in the film is a lot more complex, but also kind of you can really feel it because there's so much. It's not like Nicole Kidman is in a sexist marriage, you know. To what appears to Antonio Banderas' character, they have a healthy, loving, good sex life, and so a big part of the betrayal is the fact that, unbeknownst to him, she feels very differently from him. She doesn't feel the same way, and then goes out and finds it with someone else. So that kind of betrayal is like, it's so deep and would be so devastating. And so there's something like, God, when Antonio Banderas, when he's like crying, there are real tears.
Yeah. Nice to see Antonio Banderas just in a solid, you know, supporting dramatic role, you know, not in a franchise, not in a big ridiculous movie. I've not really seen him just like acting in a, you know, not the main star, not a big bombastic film.
Yeah, totally. Again, you know, how often have we heard in the past of women actors of a certain age saying, you know, now I just play grandmothers and wives. I love to see these like Hollywood stars playing husbands. That's great.
Yeah, I thought it was really good.
The other thing, just again touch on the end without wanting to spoil it too much. Sophie Wilde plays Esme, Nicole Kidman's assistant in the film. And I really loved that a big part of the unraveling of the relationship is about her character and how she handles it. Because I thought that is such a clever invoking of the whole idea within the corporate world of women raising each other up, and this is a sort of a almost like a B plot that's kind of running through the film, is about whether this character will get a promotion and about the idea that the company and Nicole Kidman's character kind of admits that this is a company that's all about gender equality and rights for its workers, but the reality is it's not fulfilling that. And then the way that Nicole Kidman's affair kind of comes into that and uses almost an answer to that. And what ultimately happens is that Esme's character saves Romy. That's the name of Nicole Kidman, as I keep calling her the actor's name. She saves her ultimately, whilst also using the power that she has gained with this information to help herself. And I just thought that was a really satisfying element to the story that really nicely weaves these disparate parts together.
Absolutely, and it's the kind of the crux of it is that she has to maintain this image that inspired her to want to become successful. You know, she can't let the side down. Basically, it was the gist of it, I would say.
Yeah.
I'm kind of very crudely paraphrasing here, but you know, that was the kind of the twist of the table, is that the new young worker is kind of is basically taking control of the image of somebody who needs, you know, it can't have this.
Yeah. The archetype, the image, the message has to be preserved, even if underneath it, Romy is like everyone else, human and fallible.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, I'd say overall, just a very satisfying film. I had high expectations. The site said a strong yes, and it wasn't disappointed. there's been a lot about Nicole Kidman and how, like in the press, there's been this weird thing of, oh, she's around so much at the moment. This is her era, but also there's a kind of like subtext of, oh, she's playing all these ice queens. Maybe she's working a bit too much. Seems to be the like subtext that I'm disseminating from this. It's insane to me. She is one of the best actors working, and I love how fearless she is because I mean, she spoke about how playing this part made her feel so vulnerable. Of course it would. It's like an incredibly intimate thing. And her and the director had this like very, very close relationship where they worked on the script together. They read through the intimate scenes and kind of reworded them, redrafted them. And then even on set one, there was an intimacy coordinator there, but it was Reijn who would often be like, had Nicole Kidman in her arms between scenes to like support her because it was so kind of taxing. And I just think props to her. Like that is quite a grueling part to play, and I love that she has just like absolutely gone for it. And it seems like she's being a little bit overlooked. That Babygirl didn't get any nominations at the BAFTAs, but yeah, I was a bit displeased about that. But Nicole Kidman won Best Actress at the Venice Film Festival, so there is some acknowledgement, and I'm really glad about that.
Yeah, I went into this knowing very little, and I was very pleasantly surprised to realise, oh, great, it's a BDSM erotic thriller, and I had a great time. And there's a lot of chat about how, you could say that it's her character in this film is kind of related to some degree to the character in the Eyes Wide Shut, in Kubrick's Eyes Wide Shut film, which I can see that. I think there's not much depth to that, but you can certainly see it's a related character.
Yeah, I know. I will. Yeah, I read that as well.
Sure.
There are sex scenes in both films. I feel like, and she is a great actor that brings a lot to these roles. But yeah, I don't really see much of a connection apart from that. Besides that,
yeah.
It certainly seems like a very different atmosphere on set. I don't think Stanley Kubrick had Nicole Kidman in his arms, giving him a hug between awkward scenes with her husband. But I might be wrong, and I hope I am wrong.
No, absolutely not. Oh my God, yeah. Different directors, different approaches, I guess. Yeah.
Well, just to bring this back to the question I asked you at the start of the show, James, I agree. I do think we're kind of tiptoeing, we're dipping our toe back into sexy movies. Like, there have been a few in the past year, Saltburn, Challengers, both of them did very, very well. Babygirl, it is doing very well. It's already beat its budget. I think as of this recording, it's grossed 27 million at the box office. So it's definitely on course to break even.
Great.
And so I'm hoping the studios will get the message that this is what we like and we want these kind of... But the only thing I worry is that they won't understand what exactly we want, because it's not just about sex on screen. It's about complexity, emotional depth, all these things.
No, sorry. We just... that's all wait. No, just sex. We'll just give you lots of sex. Okay, there you go. You're expecting too much of the main of Hollywood cinema.
Yeah. But, I'll take it. I will choose that over superheroes any day. So that's okay. But I think, yeah.
Are we going to get? I wonder if we're going to get to the point where we get sexy thriller fatigue.
Oh God, no. Actually, no. I mean, that did kind of happen in the 90s, didn't it? I think there was definitely a tipping point where it had gotten a bit out of control. I would love
so
that.
Many Joe Esterhaus scripted erotic thrillers we can take, or we could have taken back in the 90s.
Yeah, it's true. Well, we'll just have to see. We'll have to see what comes in the next couple of years, if we're sated or if we're still left yearning for more.
Come on, Tom. Tom Cruise, you need to do your kind of riff on this. You need to do your kind of answer to this film.
Oh my God, I would love that. I would love him to move away from his still clinging to the action man character and move back into the more erotic thrillers. That would be fantastic.
Like his character in Magnolia, do another Paul Thomas Anderson character piece. Yeah, one of his best roles.
In my opinion, his best role by far. Absolutely, yeah. I want him to go back in that direction, but I don't know. He seems to be desperate to prove to everyone that he can still do stunts. So I think we're a long way off.
Yeah, maybe once he's done his film where he goes onto a space station, which he's got lined up, maybe once he's done that, maybe then he'll be like, you know what, maybe it's time to go back and do those small personal pictures.
I don't know how I feel about the fact that we're ending this show about Nicole Kidman's star turn in Babygirl talking about Tom Cruise, but here we are. That's what's happened, guys.
Sorry.
No, it's great. It happens. It happens. At least in this instance, we're thinking of Tom Cruise simply as Nicole Kidman's ex. That's how I'm framing it. He's the +1. Nicole Kidman's the star.
Absolutely, we were. Yes, absolutely. Thank goodness for that.
All right. Well, on that note, thank you very much for listening to another episode of Groovy Movies.
And if you could leave us a like or a nice review, it all helps get the podcast out to a wider audience.
So we'll see you next week. Bye.
Bye.
Groovy Movies is produced and edited by us, Lily Austin and James Brailsford. And James also produced the theme music.
Follow us on Instagram and TikTok at Groovy Movies Pod, or email us groovymoviespod@gmail.com.
For more information about the films discussed, check out the show notes.